You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. On the eve of signing day, LSU finally made a big, gigantic splash. Last weekend, the Tigers had a slew of official visitors on campus, including a bunch of transfer portal players, 3 of them on the defensive line. And LSU ended up getting all 3 of those guys committed on Tuesday evening. They are Braden Swinson, the edge player out of Oregon, Paris Shand, the defensive tackle from Arizona, and Jalen Lee, the defensive tackle from the University of Florida. I'll talk about each of them here in a moment. But here was Brian Kelly talking about the approach to the portal. Especially the way the question was phrased is, a year in, are you more comfortable with the portal? And this was Brian Kelly sort of explaining the way they're approaching how they want to use the portal moving forward.
I don't feel confident in the portal. I think I feel confident in what we're going to use the portal for. And that is strictly to bolster a position group that is still in need of development. This program, as I said, will be built by freshmen, and development will happen within these walls. We're still not there, in particular, on the defensive side of the ball. And so you'll see that as we move forward on Friday's announcements in terms of players. But the portal is a very tricky environment. So I think what I'm confident about is that we have a plan, and a plan as to how we're going to use it, the kind of players that we want to bring in out of the portal. But I think it's a moving target still, and you've got to be very, very careful.
Okay. I want to reiterate. A year ago, the portal was a necessity. We talked about this about a bunch on yesterday's show. But a year ago, the portal was a necessity. We all know the numbers. You were decimated. You had to go get guys in the portal, and they ended up having 15 mid-year guys out of the portal and ended up being 19 in total because you had some guys that didn't show up until the fall. So you had to do that just so you could have guys on your roster that had played college football. Remember, you still had the hard cap of 25. Now, you got the luxury of signing 7 over that number because of COVID and all that stuff, so you massaged the numbers a bit, but you didn't have the luxury of going and signing 40 high school players to get your numbers back up. You had to use the portal, and they did, which is why you saw guys like Colby Richardson and, of course, Mekhi Gardner and Kyron Lacey and all the guys that we talked about, and a lot of whom played a massive part in your team. I mean, your quarterback was a transfer. You brought in 2 offensive linemen. What ended up being your best interior defensive lineman was a transfer. I mean, your 2 starting cornerbacks were a transfer. You started a safety and a nickel that were transfers. I mean, you had to. You had to. But that's also not sustainable because then you're turning your roster over. So that's what Brian Kelly's saying. This is going to be built. The roster is going to be built on the backs of freshmen. Not saying you're going to play freshmen. And he was asked about that because he asked for clarification. He came back later and, was talked about playing. Can you play number 4? Because he talked about the importance of getting younger and building through the freshmen, but not completely relying on them. Here's what he said.
I think we saw that this year, that we could play some freshmen and compete at the highest level, and that confidence level obviously has allowed us to look at freshmen and say, you know what, we can play freshmen. Do we want to have freshmen across the board? Probably not. We would like to be a little bit more veteran, if you will. And I will be quite frank with you, is that there are some position groups that we need to kind of help out, if you will, through the transfer portal with more veteran players. But that doesn't mean that we're going to stunt the growth of a particular position group because we're bringing in somebody from the transfer portal. We're still going to let them compete, and the best players will play. But I love your question because I think we gained so much more confidence this year And I did, and seeing, Emery and Will in particular, and Mason go out, and certainly Harold go out and compete as freshmen at a high level.
So, okay, I know we're throwing a lot at you here, but again, today is a lot about the literal people that you're using to build the program and the signees, but also continuing to illustrate what Brian Kelly's approach is going to be as he builds this roster and continues to build this program. So, yes, look, you have some young dudes show up and show out, and you got Emory Jones and Will Campbell and Harold Perkins and Mason Taylor. Yeah, you learn, okay, we can play freshmen that are elite and can survive at this level. But there's also going to be position groups where you got to supplement. And clearly, you've heard Brian say this over and over again, Brian Kelly say this over and over again, is they have got to add players on the defensive line. Jaquelin Roy declared for the draft. Mason Smith's coming back off of injury. But you had 3 dudes playing at D-tackle last year, this season. You had Mekhi Wingo, Jaquelin Roy, Jacobian Guillory. They played all the snaps. You didn't see Bryce Langston. You didn't see Ty G. Hill. You didn't see Fitzgerald West. When you saw depth, you saw like moving Ali Gay inside, right? I mean, that's how they gave dudes a break. They just didn't have numbers. So they got to add numbers and experienced depth, and that's what they did. So Brian Kelly's always said his preference in the portal is to take guys from Louisiana, and they did that with Jalen Lee. So Jalen Lee is a guy from, of course, from Live Oak, who signed with Florida, played 3 years there in Gainesville, 25 games, and now is coming back to Louisiana to finish out his college career in basically his hometown. So they added a Louisiana guy and a dude that is now 21 years old instead of an 18-year-old, a 21-year-old that's played 3 years in the SEC and 25 games. Again, you didn't add somebody that you're expecting to come in and be a starter day one. If that happens, awesome. He will have earned it. But more importantly, what you did is you added a guy that gives you experienced depth. So you add Jalen Lee, and then they also added Paris Shand. Paris Shand is one of the guys from the University of Arizona who was on campus, and he committed. By the way, his commitment tweet was awesome. He has like this old school picture of Mike the Tiger. It's like a Tiger Cub Mike, like biting a football with LSU written on it. Like, I don't know where he dug up that picture, but it's awesome. And his commitment post is one word. It just says committed. That's it. Good for you. Keep it simple. Paris Shand played 3 years at the University of Arizona, played in 23 games. Again, you're seeing experience depth. Not overwhelming. In 3 years, 23 games, 41 tackles, 5.5 for loss, couple of forced fumbles. He's not coming in here to say, I'm taking Mason Smith's job. It's to say, when Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo need a breather, I'm not kicking Ali Gay down. I'm not kicking my defensive end down and putting in an extra end or an extra linebacker. I'm just bringing in a dude that's played in 25 college football games at the FBS level. So that's what you continue to see with these additions. And the third, is Braden Swinson. Now, Braden Swinson is a defensive end from Oregon, another dude who's played 3 years at Oregon, 30 career games played, and he committed to LSU last night. So again, whenever you're looking at the end position, they're at the edge. You've got B.J. Ojulari going to the draft. We've talked about Savion Jones, who was basically the big edge on the left side, but backing up Ali Gay. Xavier Carter is the guy that's probably your jack linebacker, and now you've added some edge players. Obviously, you did that today. Deshaun Womack, who's the second highest rated prospect in your class, who's an edge player, who's likely going to give you immediate snaps. Well, now you've got a guy, instead of just a dude in Xavier Carter that's a first-time starter, provided he wins the job, and a true freshman. Now you've got a guy in that mix that's played 3 years of college football and 30 games at the FBS level in the Pac-12, who's physically at 21, 22 years old going to be more developed than dudes at 18 that can give you experience in your rotation. That's a vast, vast difference than a year ago going saying, we need Joe Fouché. We need Greg Brooks. We need Jark Bernard-Converse. We need Mekhi Garner. We need Jaden Daniels. You know what I mean? Like, you needed all these guys to field a roster. Now those guys are, okay, we're hitting the portal in spots where we're thin to give us depth and competition. That's a dramatically different conversation than LSU was having a year ago. So a really productive day on Tuesday where, I mean, all within like 10 minutes of each other, boom, boom, boom. Lee, Shand, Swinson, all committed. LSU, again, is going to wait till Friday to formally announce all of the transfers. But Brian Kelly said it. They expect to have between 8 and 10 transfer players in the mid-year. So here in January to go through spring ball. You got 4 committed right now. You got more coming. And he's told you where. Defensive line, secondary, more players, more targets are coming. We'll see when they do. But big additions in a literal sense with these large humans and figuratively at a position where you needed veteran depth, and they got it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.